January 3rd, 2025. 6:47 a.m. local time, Caracas, Venezuela. While most of the world was still asleep, United States Special Operations Forces carried out what might be the most brazen act of international aggression in modern history. They didn't just bomb military targets. They didn't just launch airstrikes on a sovereign nation. They kidnapped a sitting president, Nicolas Maduro, and his wife, removed them from their own country, and Donald Trump announced it to the world like he'd just closed a real estate deal. Let that sink in for a second. A democratically elected head of state, whether you like him or not, was literally abducted by a foreign military on his own soil. CBS News confirmed it. Multiple Venezuelan cities bombed, airports destroyed, ports hit, and the constitutional leader of an independent country? Gone. Taken. Kidnapped. This isn't some third world coup whispered about in back rooms. This is the United States openly telling the entire world we can do this to anyone, anytime, anywhere. Now, if you're watching this thinking, well, Maduro's a dictator, he probably deserved it, hold on. Because whether you love Maduro or hate him is completely irrelevant to what I'm about to show you. This isn't about one man. This isn't even really about Venezuela. This is about what happens next. Because here's what the mainstream media won't tell you. Venezuela isn't the end game. Venezuela is the opening move. And if you think this stops at one Latin American country, you fundamentally misunderstand what's happening right now on the global stage. See, there's a reason Trump chose this moment. There's a reason Marco Rubio, the second most powerful person in America right now, holding more concentrated foreign policy power than anyone since Henry Kissinger, has been obsessing over this for 30 years. There's a reason Venezuela specifically became the target, and it has nothing to do with democracy, nothing to do with human rights, nothing to do with drug trafficking or any of that PR nonsense they're feeding you. It's about three things: resources, power, and the desperate attempt of a declining empire to maintain control over a world that's rapidly slipping through its fingers. In this video, I'm going to break down exactly why Venezuela was attacked, what the real motives are behind this invasion, and most importantly, who's next on the target list. Because there is a list, and some of the names on it might surprise you. By the end of this, you'll understand that what happened on January 3rd wasn't just an attack on Venezuela. It was a declaration, a message sent to China, to Russia, to every country in the global south that's been trying to build a world order that doesn't revolve around Washington. The message is simple: step out of line. And this is what happens. But here's the thing about empires in decline: they become most dangerous right before they fall. And what we're witnessing right now might not be the resurgence of American power, it might be the death throes of it. So buckle up, because what I'm about to show you goes way deeper than one invasion, one president, or one country. This is about the future of global power itself, and whether the rest of the world will submit or resist. What happened on January 3rd wasn't just an act of war. It was the moment international law died, and nobody could do anything to stop it. Here's what we know from CBS News and multiple sources on the ground. Early morning, January 3rd, U.S. Special Operations Forces, we're talking elite units, the kind that don't officially exist in most reports, launched a coordinated strike across multiple Venezuelan cities. They hit Caracas, the capital. They bombed military installations. Sure. But they also hit civilian infrastructure, airports, seaports. This wasn't a surgical strike. This was a full-scale invasion opening. And then came the main objective. Nicolas Maduro and his wife were reportedly at the presidential palace, Miraflores, when U.S. forces moved in. Now, we don't have all the details of exactly how the extraction went down because, surprise, surprise, the Pentagon isn't exactly holding press conferences about the specifics of kidnapping a foreign leader. But what we do know is this: by mid-morning, Trump was on social media announcing that Maduro had been captured and removed from the country. Not arrested. Not detained for trial. Captured. Like he's a military target, not the constitutional leader of a sovereign nation recognized by the United Nations. Think about what this means for a second. The United States didn't go through the UN, didn't go through the International Criminal Court, didn't even bother with the pretense of international law. They just took him, sent troops into another country, grabbed their president, and flew him out. This is the kind of thing we used to read about in history books, about colonial empires in the 1800s. Except this isn't 1823. This is 2025. And it's happening in broad daylight with the world watching. The legal implications here are staggering. Article 2. Paragraph 4 of the UN Charter explicitly prohibits the threat or use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state. This isn't a gray area. This is black and white. The United States just committed what international law defines as a war of aggression, which, by the way, was the primary charge at the Nuremberg trials after World War II. But here's the thing. Who's going to enforce it? China issued a statement condemning the action. So did Russia. Iran called it state terrorism. Even some Latin American countries that aren't exactly pro-Maduro expressed concern about the violation of sovereignty. But statements don't mean anything when you're the one with the biggest military on the planet. The UN Security Council? The US has veto power? The International Criminal Court? The US doesn't even recognize its jurisdiction over American citizens. International law only works when everyone agrees to follow it, and what January 3rd proved is that the United States believes it's above the law. This is the moment we need to be honest about what rules-based international order actually means. For decades, the US has lectured other countries about respecting sovereignty, about following international law, about democracy and human rights. But when those rules become inconvenient, when another country dares to chart its own course, the mask comes off. And what we see underneath isn't a defender of democracy. It's an empire that believes might makes right. What happened to Maduro wasn't about justice. It wasn't about protecting Venezuelan people. It was about sending a message to every other country that's been thinking about stepping out of line. We can do this to you too. Your borders don't matter. Your sovereignty doesn't matter. International law doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is whether we want your resources or your obedience. This is what imperial power looks like in the 21st century. But here's what I keep coming back to. Why Venezuela? Why now? Because let's be real. If this was just about democracy or human rights, there are dozens of other countries the US could invade. Saudi Arabia executes dissidents. Egypt disappeared 60,000 people. But we're not bombing Riyadh. We're not kidnapping El Sisi. So what makes Venezuela different? The answer is under their feet, and it's worth a lot more than you think. Beneath Venezuela's soil isn't just oil. It's the key to controlling the entire global economy for the next century. And Trump wants it. Let's talk numbers. Real numbers. Venezuela has the largest proven oil reserves on the planet. We're talking 304 billion barrels. To put that in perspective, that's more than Saudi Arabia, more than Canada, more than Russia. At current prices, that's roughly $20 to $25 trillion worth of oil sitting underground. But here's what most people don't know, and what makes this even more critical. Venezuela also has massive deposits of rare earth minerals. You know what rare earths are? They're the materials that make your smartphone work, that make electric vehicles possible, that are essential for advanced military technology, missile guidance systems, modern fighter jets. We're talking about neodymium, lithium, coltan, materials that are quite literally the building blocks of 21st century technology. Right now, China controls approximately 70% of the world's rare earth production, and that terrifies Washington. Because whoever controls rare earths controls the future of technology, controls the future of warfare, controls the transition to renewable energy. It's not an exaggeration to say that rare earth minerals are more strategically important than oil in the long term, and Venezuela has them in massive quantities. Now let's add some historical context that makes this all make sense. In 2007, Hugo Chavez, Venezuela's former leftist president, did something that American oil companies never forgave him for. He fully nationalized the oil industry. Up until that point, companies like ExxonMobil, ConocoPhillips, Chevron, they all had major operations in Venezuela. They were extracting Venezuelan oil and taking most of the profits. Chavez said no more. He nationalized everything, told foreign companies they could stay if they accepted minority stakes in projects majority owned by Venezuela's state oil company. Some agreed. But the big American players? They refused and left, and they've been trying to get back ever since. Now look at who's in power in the Trump administration. Chris Wright, Trump's Secretary of Energy. Know what he did before this job? He was chairman and CEO of Liberty Energy, a major fracking and oil company. This guy's entire career has been about extracting fossil fuels and maximizing profit for energy corporations. And remember Rex Tillerson, Trump's first Secretary of State during his first term? He was the CEO of ExxonMobil, the same ExxonMobil that got kicked out of Venezuela in 2007. The same ExxonMobil that's been trying to sue Venezuela for billions in compensation ever since. You're seeing the pattern here, right? This isn't about liberating Venezuelan people from dictatorship. This is about American corporations getting back access to resources that were taken away from them. This is about controlling oil reserves at a time when global oil markets are increasingly volatile. This is about breaking China's monopoly on rare earth minerals. Trump literally said during his first term that the U.S. should take the oil from countries we invade. He wasn't joking. He actually believes American military power gives the U.S. the right to seize other countries' natural resources. Here's the pattern you need to understand, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. Every single time a developing country tries to take control of its own natural resources, to use its oil, its minerals, its wealth for its own people instead of foreign corporations, they become a target. Iran in 1953, they nationalized their oil. The CIA overthrew their democratically elected government. Guatemala in 1954, their president tried to redistribute land owned by the United Fruit Company. Coup. Chile in 1973, Salvador Allende nationalized copper mines. Coup. Backed by the CIA. Iraq. In the 1990s and 2000s, Saddam wanted more control over Iraqi oil sales. Sanctions, then invasion. Libya, Gaddafi was using oil money to develop Africa independently of Western institutions. Bombed to rubble in 2011. Venezuela, nationalized oil in 2007, targeted with sanctions, coup attempts, and now open military invasion. See the pattern? The crime isn't being a dictator. Plenty of brutal dictators are U.S. allies: Egypt, Saudi Arabia, UAE. The crime is economic independence. The crime is saying our resources belong to our people, not your corporations. That is what gets you invaded.